Well, hello there, ladies and gents. Great to see you again, and welcome back to Path to Abundant Living. Ryan Ruff here, your moderator. But as always, I've got the guys in Matt Nordman and Scott Morrison of Morrison Nordman Wealth Management. They're going to be joining me in just a moment. We're going to be jumping into another great conversation on the show here today, one that we've had circled on the calendar for quite some time, and we are super excited to be welcoming on our guest, Mr. Drew Beardslee. Drew is the Vice President of Government Affairs over at the Michigan Retailers Association. We've got a really interesting conversation dialed up for you guys today. We're going to be talking, of course, about Drew's background in state government and working through public policy, but specifically, we're going to be zooming in on the intersection between retail business and government affairs, why this relationship even exists in the first place, and then, of course, how folks like Drew are really advocating on behalf of retailers in Michigan to be able to carve out positive change for those business owners and, of course, the goods and services they provide to the greater state of Michigan. And if you're sitting there, listening to me talk about how Drew's going to be speaking to Michigan specifically, and you're thinking, well, hey, I'm not a Michigan resident, I don't know how this applies to me, stop right there. A lot of the conversation we're going to have today is really applicable across the board with so many different industries across so many different states. We're just going to be zooming specifically in on Drew's relationship with Michigan and, of course, the goods and services provided to the folks in Michigan at large. But really excited to dive into today's conversation. Before we get Drew on here and dive into the nitty gritty, let's go ahead and say hi to the guys. Scott, Matt, good to see you this morning. How we doing?
Great to see you. How are things in the Rough household these days?
They're good. They're good. We're sitting down recording this episode, three weeks after my wife and I welcomed our firstborn son to the world, and I'm clawing and scraping for some sleep, guys. But it's good to be here. So
That's very exciting. Very exciting.
Congratulations.
I appreciate you guys. Yeah. So, well, we've got Drew lying in wait. And I guess before we bring him on, Scott, why don't you frame things up for us today? Why do we want to have Drew on? Obviously, gosh, there's so much we can talk about with regard to retail business in Michigan, where government kind of intersects there. But why don't you frame things up for us from your perspective?
Well, when I think about our own, clients who own their own businesses, I don't know that they're as aware of the resources that are available to them to have their legislative voices heard, to have somebody actually show up at their business and listen to what the needs are of a business owner and know that there's a resource out there for them.
I love it. And from a high level perspective, we've been excited to bring Drew on because he's really responsible for representing Michigan's retail industry before the state legislature and then advancing that industry's different public policies, really. So a lot of good value, a lot of great work that Drew and his team are doing at the Michigan Retailers Association. So with that being said, let's go ahead and welcome him aboard. Drew, thanks so much for carving time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
No, my pleasure. And congratulations on the baby boy. That's good news.
I appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Drew, well, why don't we open up with an easy and obvious question? Bring us up to speed on your background and kind of the path that led you through to your role as Vice President of Government Affairs with the Michigan Retailers Association.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. So I started working in Michigan politics 12 years ago. I've spent my whole career working in and around Michigan politics. I started by answering the phones and opening the mail for my state representative 12 years ago. And, really since then, I've been able to see sort of all three legs of the stool here in state government. I spent some time in a state senator's office and then in the executive branch under two governors from two different parties in the Department of Transportation and then in the Department of Labor. So it's really been able to see it from all sides and then make that jump into the private sector advocacy and lobbying world, first for a large trade association working in multiple states and a little bit in DC, and now here with the Michigan Retailers Association. So our members, we've got more than 5,000 members with more than 15,000 retail stores across the state. We've got our advocacy arm, which is where I really work out of. And then we also have merchant processing, credit card processing, and a workers' compensation arm. So it's really been a long path, 12 years to get here, but it feels like a good fit.
Drew, what are your primary responsibilities and who are those key stakeholders, within the MRA and how do you see that role evolving over time?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for the direct lobbying, which is just what it sounds like, engaging directly with lawmakers and policymakers here in Lansing. But I also oversee our PAC, our Political Action Committee, which spends in according with elections, and then overseeing our Friends of Retail program, which is sort of our endorsement process for those who are running for elected office to figure out who's going to advocate for policies that are most friendly to retail. And so that stakeholder group, we do a lot of work with the other business groups here in Lansing, the Small Business Association, Chamber of Commerce, those type of groups. But we're always on the lookout for those non-traditional partners too, because I think it really helps us if we can kind of get outside of our usual sphere and find who are those partners that are going to have shared goals with us, that are maybe outside of our usual coalition. A recent example of that would be a tax issue that would specifically affect delivery delivery of goods, food, whatever it may be, to any address in Michigan. And so that matters a lot to one of our members, which is DoorDash. And so we've been partnering with them to say, okay, you're obviously very connected to the retail world despite not being a brick and mortar store. So how can we work together on that? That's sort of the stakeholder world. And then how that role changes over time. I mean, frankly, the political winds in Lansing change all the time. And so really the issue set that we're going to be talking about or working with is going to change every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years, depending on who's in power in the governor's office or in the House or Senate. As that changes, we could be talking about completely different issues 2 years from now than we were 2 years ago.
Well, that sounds really fun. So, so I'm a business owner, right? Or I'm a retailer. Why should I care about politics or advocacy, specifically in the state of Michigan, since that's your role? And then how do you get your members engaged in this entire process?
Yeah. So when I hear someone ask me that question of, well, why should I care about politics? I just want to be working at my store, not worrying about all that. Well, whether you're worried about politics or not, politics is worried about you. Okay. There's a lot that your business and the way that your business operates, those debates are happening in Lansing, whether you're at the table or not. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us as retailers and our members to be able to have a voice at the table because it's that old saying about if you're not on the table or if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so it's really nobody knows how your business is going to need to comply with the law better than you do. And so bringing that voice, I think, you can look at the fact that we have 148 legislators. If you combine the House and the Senate, they can't all be experts on every single issue, but they're going to have to make decisions about a lot of issues, whether it's taxes or healthcare or agriculture or transportation. They have to make decisions across a wide, array of issues. And so they can't be experts on every single thing. And so if you are going to have to follow the law, be compliant with the law, it's on you to be able to have that perspective and share that with those who are writing the laws. And then as far as how they get engaged, I mean, we have a lot of ways to do that, whether it's like an email advocacy or encouraging phone calls. Again, that was my first job here in politics was answering the phones for a state representative. And boy, you don't always hear from the people you want to hear from. Hearing from level-headed, responsible community actors would be a real blessing. But then we also have structured ways to do it as well. Every year we have our Capital Day program where we bring retailers, members from all over the state to meet with their elected officials around the Capitol and then have a reception afterwards where they can have those one-on-one conversations with their elected officials from their district. The goal there is to have that elected official, when she has to make a critical vote later, to be able to remember, oh yeah, okay, I remember talking about this with that hardware store owner from my district. Making that connection is really, really key.
That's really interesting. I would imagine back in the day, or even probably still happens from what you said, those phone calls that come in are not people are like, man, you are doing a fantastic job, and I'm just calling to say thank you.
It's right, but honestly, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in calling to say thank you. I mean, we hear a lot about the votes that we don't want people to take, and that's all well and good. There's a role for that as well. But if you're happy with the way that your legislator is working, let her know, let him know. I mean, that goes a long way, and that can help build that relationship too.
What do you think right now are the biggest regulatory or legislative obstacles facing the business owners right now, or those retailers?
Yeah, I think at the state level here in Michigan, well, I guess I'd point to three. I'll point to one. I'll start with one that passed a few months ago, and that was changes to the minimum wage and the Earned Sick Time Act. This went into effect in February, and it was a compromise that was hammered out by the legislature to avoid a more drastic increase that would have taken effect if this ballot measure would have gone into effect in mid-February. And so what that did was changed overnight some of the rules for how business owners have to pay out paid sick time to their employees. And so we had to work with our members. I was 2 weeks in on the job at that point, but work with members to say, okay, how do we get you in compliance with this so that you're not afraid of, enforcement action being taken against you? What are your roles and responsibilities? What do you need to post in the workplace? What do you need to include in your handbook to make sure your employees know what their options are? So our advocacy doesn't stop when the governor signs the piece of paper. It goes beyond that to, okay, how do we help you be in compliance with what's already taken effect? One right now that's been a significant issue is this issue of gift card fraud. And so, this falls under the heading of organized retail crime. And a lot of time when we talk about retail theft, people think we're talking about, a smash and grab, a shoplifting, somebody's grabbing that nice pair of Nikes off the shelf and bolting out of the store. And that happens. But this issue specifically has been organized, sophisticated retail crime where bad actors take large volumes of material and then try to resell it on a third party marketplace. And so that's really a sophisticated operation that we've developed a team here in Michigan under the Attorney General's office that can go after those bad actors. But often these criminals will change their tactics faster than the law can keep up. And so one new trend that we've seen is this gift card fraud, where they will steal gift cards, they'll tamper with the back so they can get the 16 digits and the PIN, and then put it back on the shelf in the retail store, wait for someone to buy it and activate it. Once that happens, they get a notification and they clear the card before the customer even gets home. And so this is something that, we want to give prosecutors the ability to go after these more sophisticated versions of theft. And that's really something that we've been pushing for. We advocated for a package of bills to address that. I'm happy to report that last week that package of bills passed 103-1 in the House. And so that's off into the Senate. And so our advocacy work is going to continue there. So that's something from the past and something from the present. I do want to put, maybe especially for your clients, something on the radar for something that's coming in the future, which is this ballot initiative effort put forth by this group called Invest in My Kids. And what they're doing is they're calling for a new permanent 5% income tax increase to be baked into the state constitution. And this would be across the board for single filers making $500,000 a year or more, and joint filers making $1 million a year or more. And this would be a permanent tax increase in the state's constitution. It's supposedly to pay for schools, but we all know that once the money gets to Lansing, it's kind of a shell game of where that's going to end up. That's in the signature gathering process as they look to try to make that proposal a reality. And that's something that we've been pushing very strongly against as well. So that's a lot. I realize I've been talking for a while, but that's a lot of sort of past, present, future of some of the issues that we're seeing here in Lansing.
So when you hear something like that as a business owner, and you're like, well, you already have enough of my money. What should someone do in that situation? I had not heard this, and what's the likelihood it's going to pass? And you're like, okay, well, you can think of certain people. You're like, well, they clearly don't want this to go through. So how do you fight it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd say that sounds like a lot of money at first, that 500,000 or $1 million. But we know from IRS data that 2/3 of that new tax would be paid by small business owners. It'd be paid by small business owners like LLCs or S corps who are paying their taxes at the individual level. That's not necessarily their take home at the end of the day. That's money that's caught up in the business. And so as they see this, as I said, this is in the signature gathering phase right now. So the proponents are out with clipboards, standing outside, the grocery stores or standing on street corners asking you to sign. The biggest thing is don't sign it. You're going to see something that says, "Hey, do you want to help, pay for kids' education?" And then, of course, the fine print is going to tell you the truth. So I think making an awareness of that effort. I don't know what the odds are of its getting on the ballot. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of things that people are fighting to put on the ballot this year. And so this is just one item among many, but I think it's of particular interest to those who see this bad idea and say, "Hey, we gotta call attention to that." We're part of a coalition that's specifically going out to oppose that, whether that's through advertising and media, but also just educating people about the harmful side effects of that kind of stuff.
So how do you balance? I mean, because you've got lots of different size businesses that, are affected by all of the things that you're lobbying for. How do you balance the difference between the sizes of the business and how their influence is on the membership? How do you make sure that everybody's represented?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, certainly a lot of what we're going to be advocating for is going to be true of all retail, and in some cases, is small businesses outside of the retail world. So you've got small businesses, large businesses, traditional retailers, e-commerce, but a burdensome tax is going to affect all of them. An overnight change to the Earned Sick Time Act is going to affect all of them. We have members that it's just one person. It's just one person with an LLC and an online store, and yet they have to be in compliance with the kind of things that are coming out as well. And so, we do our best to make sure that we're speaking as the unified voice of Michigan retail, and not just certain members. And thankfully, a lot of the work that we do is really going to keep everybody under that tent.
So, as business owners, they're trying to mitigate risk all the time, right? The goal is to be successful. So in Michigan, there have been significant shifts, economic shifts, whether it's labor costs, supply chain issues, taxes, inflation, all the things, and you touched on a few of them today. So which of these do you see as the most pressing in the current legislative environment? And as a retailer, what do I do to kind of say, okay, how can I pull this lever or push that one to say, okay, how do I make this better for my business?
Yeah. I mean, I think all the factors you mentioned there combine to create uncertainty. And that's sort of the worst factor that you can face is if you knew that certain, metrics were going to stay consistent, you could deal with that. But if they're constantly changing, it's impossible to keep up. I think specifically of, sort of the haphazard, I would say, approach to tariffs and trade that we've seen from the administration in Washington as something that's caught some of our members off guard as they look and they see, okay, we've got inflation, we've got labor costs that we have to deal with, and now we've got specifically tariffs could change every day. So we sent out surveys to our membership to get a good sense of, okay, what do we think about this? How do we want to handle this? And we had 2/3 of our membership come back and say, or 2/3 of those who were surveyed come back and say, we're worried about how we're going to make our business work as far as importing things, in the next 3 months, the next 6 months. And so it wasn't so much in opposition to the idea of having a tariff policy. It was the uncertainty in the approach. And I think that's true across a lot of areas, but specifically for our members, it was that issue of we don't know what to expect. And that's worse than if you have maybe a bad outcome, but what it's going to, where it's going to stay for a while. And so that was a hurdle that we've had to deal with. And that's, again, the importance of advocacy, of being able to reach out. At the state level, there's not a lot happening about tariffs, but reaching out to Congress to say, okay, reclaim your rightful, role as the power of the purse, and maybe there's a role there. So that's another area of partnership that we have with our national partners. But I would put that out there as all of those things together create an uncertainty that's just really hard for store owners to deal with.
I can imagine, yeah, the uncertainty of life in general, but then as the business owner, you throw all those things in, and then they're calling Drew going, Drew, need a little help here.
Yep.
Well, obviously the markets, that's what we tell our clients all the time about markets. The markets don't like uncertainty any more than small or large businesses do. But so if I've got a concern as an individual business owner, if I've got something that's pressing on my mind, how do I effectively engage with the Michigan Retailers Association to feel like I'm heard, to be part of a larger voice, and make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned the value of direct advocacy. If you have a relationship with an elected official, that's fantastic. But also being able to reach out to me and the Michigan Retailers Association and say, what's something that, I've got an issue that I'm dealing with. You would be surprised at how often somebody comes to us with a problem they're facing, and we go, oh yeah, we're hearing that from a lot of members. We're hearing that from a lot of folks, that this is something that you're not alone in this. This is an issue that's facing a lot of people. And so that's a good way to sort of build that coalition. And again, at MRA, we're looking to find, not only can we find people that are on the same sides of an issue, but can we bring in people that are maybe non-traditional partners in that coalition? Can we figure out who else might be facing that, that we'd benefit from partnering with to advocate?
So when you look at the work that you do for the retailers, what does that mean for customers? Like, so I'm a customer, right? How does that affect me? And like, what are those effects of this advocacy for these retailers?
I think a lot of it is kind of two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's all the same supply chain. It's just where you are in that exchange. And so, the example of the gift card fraud, yeah, that hurts the stores, and they don't want to see theft happening at their stores. But it also hurts the individual who tried to buy a gift card for their grandma's birthday, and that card is empty. And so, a lot of these issues are going to cut both ways. I think also we have to remember that, the store owners are economic actors in their own right too. The bakery store owner shops at the shoe store, and the grocery store owner shops at the hardware store, and so there's this network of economic relationships that we all have, that the customers for one product are going to be the producers of another, and so on and so on.
Can you share an individual story of a kind of a success story of where the MRA has heard a concern and then turned that into something that everybody can feel strong about their membership?
Yeah, I mean, specifically last year at our Capitol Day, or rather this year in April, we had members. They were all, talking about a similar set of issues to try to get it on the radar for their elected officials. And we had a few that had personal experiences with that gift card fraud, where they'd gone into a store, bought a gift card for somebody, and then when the recipient of the gift goes to use it, it was gone. And hearing that story firsthand, I think, meant a lot more than just hearing about it in the abstract. And I think we can directly point to that when we saw that those bills were introduced. Those had 52 co-sponsors, Republican and Democratic, that came together to say, yeah, we want to do something about this. And I don't think you'd see that level of engagement and frankly bipartisanship if you didn't have some of those one-on-one connections. Um, I like to tell our members that I can go into the offices and I can share some statistics and I can share some data, and that's all good and that's helpful. It's good to have good data on your side, but the storytelling matters a lot more, and it matters a lot more hearing it from the store owner or the store manager than it does hearing it from me. And so that's why we're such big proponents of either getting people out to Lansing to meet with their elected officials, or if you can invite your elected official to you. No elected official wants to turn down a photo op like that if they can come to your store and really get a sense of how you're doing your business.
That's good to hear, because, some people who may be a little cynical might be like, well, we're not the giant store in town or in the state, so why would my elected official come see me or speak with me or even take my phone call? But from what we're hearing is, oh no, they want to. They want to help you because they want the vote.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that sort of Main Street advocacy matters a lot. If you are a voice for your community, and the elected official, if she's listening or if he's listening, will pay attention.
That's good. So in Michigan, as we say, we're the ordinary shoppers. What can we do? What is the Buy Nearby program that we hear about?
Yeah, so I wanted to put this on the radar because it's coming up. So our the Buy Nearby weekend is October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And that's a time when we encourage Michigan shoppers to shop locally. So that's the Buy Nearby, right? So every year we do a Buy Nearby economic study that sort of takes a big picture of what Michigan retail looks like. We can see that retail employs more than 500,000 workers in Michigan, home to more than 90,000 retail establishments. And we kind of look at some of the downstream effects of what it means when you spend your money at a local store. And so whether that's for every $100 you spend at a Michigan retailer, that produces $5 in supporting public services through the taxes, right? Or and then to take that and say, okay, we want to encourage you to shop local because if you moved, from online shopping and you moved just 10% of your online purchases to shopping at a Michigan business, you could increase employment by 11,000 jobs. You could boost labor income by almost $560 million, and you increase Michigan's economic activity by more than $1 billion. And so that's a weekend where we really want to highlight the importance of being able to, shop locally. If you can buy your dog food online, but if you're going to drive by a place that sells it on your way home, consider doing that.
Well, I love that. In storytelling would be like, well, yeah, but it's just so convenient. But if you tell the story of, oh, if you switch, 10% of your shopping, it equates to 11,000 jobs, which are your family, your friends, your neighbors, which equates to, right, healthy communities and all the things, and have that story told. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's just how many of us have heard of it? So I'm glad you brought it to our attention.
Which kind of leads us to the last question, and that's if any of this that our audience is listening to resonates with them, how would they go about contacting you and or the MRA to get involved? If this moves them to say, hey, I haven't been a member. I'm hearing things that directly affect my business. Maybe it's time to contact them. How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is to go to retailers.com and click on Join Now. That's right there on the front page. But reach out to me as well. I think my contact information is there on the website as well. To talk about from, one of those earlier questions about why should I care about politics? I just want to be working on my business, whether that's retail or other small business. The value in having a voice in Lansing means that, yes, I want you to be paying attention to what's happening politically. I want you to be a politically engaged member, but I also want you to have the confidence to know that while you're working on your business, we at Michigan Retailers Association are working on your behalf in Lansing. And if that sounds like something that you would benefit from, I would encourage you to check out the website, retailers.com.
I love it, Drew. This seems like a value really to so many business owners out there that I always make the joke with Matt and Scott. I mean, uh, you've got so much on your plate as a business owner between the daily operations, making sure clients are happy, your own marketing efforts. I mean, thinking about what's going on in Lansing or Washington for that matter is like the 30th thing on your to-do list. And most of the time, let's be honest, it's going to get pushed. So it's pretty great to hear that there's an association in Michigan retailers that is getting together and kind of working and checking that box for business owners on their behalf. Again, folks, we'll flash the information at the bottom of the screen for how you can get in touch with Michigan Retailers Association, and maybe even connect with Drew down the line to open up a dialogue. But Drew, we so appreciate you and your time, and we know you've got other retail folks to get back to and to help out today. So thank you again, and wish you all the best moving forward.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate the time.
All righty, there you have it, folks. Drew Beardslee, Vice President of Government Affairs over at the Michigan Retailers Association, joining us. So appreciate his time, his expertise on all matters focused, all retail focused matters, that is. Matt, Scott, a lot to bite off and chew from this conversation and the various impacts that Drew's work is having on these retail folks. I mean, even yourself included. I'll start with you, Scott. What was maybe one of the bigger takeaways from yourself?
Well, if I'm truly honest with myself, am I as politically engaged as I should be? The answer is, definitely I'm not. Having talked to Drew, having access to Drew, it makes me think a lot about, the idea that we have somebody that is available through our political system that is there looking out for our best interests, as long as we share with them what our best interests are. So when he brings up something like businesses, not incomes, but when, when we're talking about taxes on incomes of 500,000 or $1 million or more, some people tune out and think, well, that's not me. But if you have a business whose revenue is 500,000 to $1 million, they are talking about you. So, those are the kind of things that really jumped out for me. I think it's so easy to get kind of, complacent about what's going on politically and kind of like, does my voice really mean anything? I think I felt the excitement from Drew that, it is, and that they want to hear from us.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what you want to hear when you're surrounding anything, politics related. You want to know that somebody's in your corner, backing you and helping to facilitate any of those difficult conversations, or maybe even topics that are above your knowledge level or expertise. I mean, that's what you want. Matt, would you feel like was a big takeaway from your end?
To continue with what Scott said, you hear all this stuff that most people and business owners, same. It's like most people want to know, how does it affect me, right? Drew comes in and he talks about all these different things that can affect you, but it's like, when do you have time to think about all those things that are affecting you? Like, it's like, hey, this is very important, and we should be leveraging, business owners should be leveraging Drew and the MRA because of what's happening. And we get so focused on day to day as business owners, right? I got to run the business and keep the clients happy and make sure everything is running smoothly. And to the point of, oh, that can get pushed down the list. It needs to move closer to the top of the list, because when you hear everything that's being done, it's like, well, who's advocating for you? Well, you have this group that is specifically set up to advocate for you, whether you're a one-person shop or a massive organization with tens of thousands of employees. And so take full advantage of that. And then the other thing, when you hear about the Buy Nearby program, how many people know that, hey, change your spending habits by 10% locally in Michigan, and that will create more jobs for people in Michigan? I'm not sure many people who wouldn't want that. And so getting that message out there more and more only benefits all of our own communities in the state at large.
They're constantly looking at what are the issues that we should be concerned about. We're not always doing, from a day-to-day perspective, how it affects our business, yeah, we're dealing with that day-to-day thing, but they're aware of not only political movement toward a particular legislation before we see it on the radar. They can kind of say, hey, this is on the horizon. There's people talking about this, and they can, with that membership, help cut some of that off before it really gets any kind of a grassroots effort going. And so, sometimes it's just a matter of being aware of what's being talked about out there, because like he said, there's a lot of things that could be framed in a positive way initially until you dig in deeper and find out all the levels behind it. It's not exactly what what's best for your business.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes without almost saying is that when you see a change come into effect, and all of a sudden 2, 3, 5% is starting to trickle away because of X, Y, or Z tax, well, then all of a sudden you better believe that's going to be at the top of your priority list, and you're going to be thinking heavily about it. When had you leveraged an organization like MRA, leaned into their help, and maybe even let your voice ring out a little bit to help them in their efforts, maybe that 2-5% isn't a thing. It's not even a thing that you're dealing with. So it's really an awesome thing that Drew and his team are doing over at MRA. Something tells me Drew will probably be back on the show to talk about maybe a more specific issue or anything in particular, just given his vast level of government experience and that intersection for business owners. I think today was a super beneficial conversation. And guys, I mean, we covered a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's folks out there that are thinking, man, I should probably touch base with my wealth manager and see how, these changes in Michigan or even my own state are impacting me on a more granular level. If anybody is in that boat and they do want to open up a dialogue with you guys, Matt, what's the best way somebody could connect with you?
The traditional way, give us a call, 517-333-7967, or the website morrisonnordman with 2 N's on the end.com.
All righty, perfect. Well, fellas, look, I appreciate you guys and taking the time to jump on with me today. For all the folks out there, I'm sure today's conversation was beneficial, and I'll see you guys back here on the next one soon.
All right. See you, Ryan.
Sounds
See you
good,
soon,
Ryan.
Scott.
All right, you too, Matt.
All righty. Well, folks, we're going to take a final moment as we always do on this show and thank you for making us a part of your day. If you enjoyed today's discussion, if you learned a thing or two, I feel like we can all say we did. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you checked us out on today so that you don't miss out on future conversations just like the one today where Matt, Scott, and myself will either dive into specific wealth management topics or we'll bring on some great guests from their respective networks to leverage their expertise, their background, and dive into some of the issues that matter most to you and yours. But look, for Matt and Scott, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long now. But once again, we thank everybody for stopping by and being with us today on Path to Abundant Living.